Good morning, ma'am. Shall we start, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. So, very good morning to all the participants. I welcome you all for our third day of Atal FTP on robotics. The first session is going to be handled by Dr. G. Subhashini, Madam, and Professor PSG College of Technology, Coimbatore. The topic is Artificial Intelligence for Robotics. So, before start the session, I would like to read her profile. So, on behalf of Sri Ishwar College of Engineering and Department of EEE, I welcome you, Madam.
Thank you.
So, Dr. G. Subhashini began her career as an R&D engineer for around 5 years after the graduation. Later, she joined PSG College of Technology as a lecturer, pursued her PG, and obtained her PhD in the area of distributed computing. So, Dr. G. Subhashini ma'am's areas of interest include distributed computing, optimization techniques, machine learning, and IoTs. Her research areas are distributed systems, machine learning, optimization techniques, big data analytics, information security, evolutionary algorithm, and meta-heuristic algorithm. So now I hand over the session to Dr. G. Subhashini madam. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that nice introduction. Hope I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So today I will be talking on artificial intelligence for robotics, and we see that this word artificial intelligence is becoming so popular, and every field of engineering and technology in some way or the other use artificial intelligence mechanisms or techniques for solving a variety of problems. And we also witness that several new courses are emerging in the field of artificial intelligence in various domains, right? So we have as BSc courses, we have as engineering courses, some offer it as postgraduate courses, and many of the young researchers, whatever problems they try to research on or try to find a solution, uh, look into solving. Maybe it is a field of mechanical, it will be a field of civil, right? Uh, Electrical, electronics, whatnot. But everywhere we see somehow or the other, these techniques are used to find a good solution to the problem, or an optimal solution to the problem that we are considering. So Abhi, I will share my screen. My screen is visible, sir?
Let me check, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So today, what I will be talking about is how did this all come into, right? So where it all started, uh, what was the strong reason behind why it became so popular, and what type of problems uh, you could solve with these AI techniques, and what are the different phases involved in building an AI system, right? So there are several aspects to be considered. It is not only the algorithm part or the coding part that makes the entire system. So we know the development of any system involves several phases, and we have to build a model or an architecture, and in several phases or that architecture, or in several stages of building a system, what is that we have to look into, or what are the considerations we need to incorporate. And we will have a one or two demo if time permits, to see how it is used in what type of problems have been solved in the real world and available in the market for the consumers on this technology. So as of today, I do not know whether we have made our jobs easier by using the available technology, or we have made our brains dull by not giving it more of activity, right? So we know that only when we practice something repeatedly, we would be able to master, right? Nowadays we can see even at homes, we feel so lazy to switch on our devices or to operate our devices, maybe a fan, TV, whatever it is, right? We started with a remote control, right? So the system of remote control came where at a particular distance, we could be able to switch on or operate the devices. And now it's become more convenient. We need not even possess a remote with us to control the devices. We have so many assistants, personal assistants, that is how we call it, right? Available in the form of technology. So hope you all understand what I mean. Either it is the Google Voice or the Alexa or whatever it is. So you just instruct it whatever is to be done, and it is there for you to do everything, right? So that is the growth in technology we have today, which is all basically built on intelligent systems, right? What are the different stages in the intelligence we can put it, right? That we call it as the level of autonomy, right? So what types of autonomy you can put, to what levels of autonomy can be put into a system, right? So this whatever is possible to the best, I will be concentrating on these topics, and I also have some research problems that you may consider if some of you are interested in doing research in the field of artificial intelligence, applying it to the domain of robotics and automation. So first of all, we need to clearly understand what is artificial intelligence, right? So there are so many things that come into our mind as we understand what is AI, right? So do they refer to the programs that behave externally like humans, right? So externally is, do they appear, right? So is it something, is it a code that we write to make the system appear like a human being? That is what we mean externally. So whether it's able to walk, it's able to sit, it's able to stand, fine. So that is the external behavior of a human. Or is it that they operate internally as a human, right? So we know internally we are able to think, we are able to understand, we are able to reason out, right? So many activities we perform internally. So is it artificial intelligence related to those activities? Or we say AI is referring to a system which behave intelligently. So when we look at all these questions, we think actually everything seems to be an answer for the question, right? So there is no definite answer telling this is what an intelligent system can do and this is what an intelligent system cannot do, as we cannot restrict the characteristic of a human, right? You cannot say limit, this is what a human can do, this is something beyond the capacity of human, right? So it differs from person to person, right? Sometimes we do act in a different way, we exhibit some irrational behaviors, right? So mimicking a human, that is what in simple we understand as what artificial intelligence is, right? So whatever a human is capable of doing. So everything should be possible with a system. So building such a system definitely is not that easier, right? So we do not remain the same always. We have so many activities before us. Based on that, sometimes we plan something, and due to the possibility of not doing the task, we try to replan it, right? Or we try to postpone it. So we are able to take some decisions which keep on changing from time to time, and sometimes things are uncertain, right? And we are supposed to take some decisions in at the period of uncertainty, right? So all that is possible. So you can see n number of tasks before us which we are handling, right? And so are we trying to model a machine, right, which can do all these activities, right? So definitely modeling one single machine to do all these activities, we can understand the practical difficulty behind it, right? So what we do is we concentrate on a particular activity of a human being and try to build a system for that particular task, right? So because of the limitations of what can be built as a machine, right? So when you say you are creating an personal assistant, right? So it is only capable of doing a set of subtasks what a human can do, right? It actually does not do everything. So when I say I have a self-driving car, of course it is an intelligent system. So the functionality of that particular intelligent machine again is limited, right? So to what aspect it is designed, of course it may give us 100% efficiency, but it is not replacing the entire activities of what a human can perform. So that is the basic difference between all of us have a question. So if everything could be done by machines, do we not require manual workers to be hired in the future, right? So that is why I wanted to differentiate the difference between a human and a machine, right? A machine is always a machine, and you cannot replace a human, right? Because of the limitation of telling what it has to do. It can only do that, right? It is not programmed to solve everything that happens. So maybe you have an unmanned aerial vehicle, right? So that also has a limitation. We perform robotic surgeries, right? So of course under the direction or the supervision of a well-educated doctor, right? So these are some of the limitations which we can tell to define or defend that machines are not humans are not replaceable by even intelligent machines we have, right? So what is the purpose of having an intelligent system? We all know, right? So there are several categories of tasks which humans find difficult to do sometimes, or it may be a boring task if it has to be repeatedly done, right? Or it may be it's dangerous for a human to take up those tasks, right? So that is why actually we wanted technology to help us in some activities where we have difficulty in performing those activities, right? So that is how it all started, and now it has become using technology for convenience also, right? And as we have mentioned, so I've just given a possible definition of AI with reference to several books and information available henceforth. So we measure it, we mean it as a machine that exhibits some characteristics of intelligence. So I would like to underline that some, right? Like thinking, reasoning, planning, learning, adapting, and so on, right? Or it may be a machine which can simulate thinking or which may reason out, right? Make some decisions under an uncertain condition. So to have a clear line of difference between what is AI and what is not AI, right? So if you are designing a robot that could avoid obstacles using simple rules, right? That means if the obstacle is to the right, go left, or you say go straight or turn to some direction. So you are writing a set of rules, and based on that, the robot makes some inferences and it tries to solve the problem, right? That is actually not AI, right? So because you have framed a set of rules that are to be followed. So where are you allowing the machine to decide on itself, right? So that is no way related to intelligence. Whereas, suppose the robot is able to identify something, recognize that it is an obstacle which has to be avoided, fine, and then decide on an action to be performed, then their intelligence comes into, right? And here again in another example, where you operate a mechanical arm by means of joystick or some other mechanisms, again, the entire control is with the human, right? So it is only dancing to your tune. That is what we can say. Whereas you have several objects of different texture, of different size, of different categories, right? So at the end of the day, you will have to remove all those objects from a particular place, right? So each object has to be dealt in a different way, right? Maybe some objects made of glass, some objects made of wood, some objects made of some metal. So some may be of 5 mm diameter, some may be of 50 mm diameter, something else may be of 500 mm diameter. So if the machine is able to understand the variation between all this, so how it has to handle each object, right? If it is sensible to do that. So we know whenever we handle a glass object, if we do not pay proper attention, then there is a possibility of it falling and breaking, right? So it's so brittle. So how you hold the object, how you pick it, how you place it, everything matters, right? So you cannot pick a glass object as you pick a wooden object, or you cannot place it like a metal object, right? So if you place a metal object which is bigger in size at a larger force, then you know what would be the consequences, right? So if the machine is able to make an appropriate decision of determining how an activity has to be done, so there it applies intelligence to perform that activity, right? So that is all AI is. So when this term AI was actually coined, it was in 1950 in a conference. It was launched in a conference held in Dartmouth by 1956 by John McCarthy. And what are the various fields where AI is applicable, right? So who people in which profession actually do AI, right? Mathematicians, economists, neuroscientists, psychologists, philosophers, and it's also used in various disciplines of engineering for control mechanisms, right? So these are the popular fields I have listed. Of course, this is just to just an information for us to understand that it is not having a domain in a application in a specific domain, right? It has a wide range of domains where this AI would be applicable, right? And you have built an AI system, right? How do you test if really the system is intelligent or not? and what are the parameters you test for, right? So initially, when an intelligent system was developed, of course, now we, based on the application for what we have designed the system, we have several metrics based on which we evaluate the performance of the system. So earlier we had a test called as a Turing test, right? So we can tell that a machine is intelligent. So this test was proposed by Alan Turing to test the level of intelligence of a machine, right? So again, it is with respect to some act. So when you make use of a human to perform something, what is the response the human provides? And if the response of a machine is indistinguishable from that of a human, then it is understood that the machine possesses the same level of intelligence, right? So suppose I assemble some components, right? And we all know that the assembly of components have been automated these days, and it is assembled by machines in different industries. So when your Turing test passes is, so when there is no difference in, somebody comes and looks at two products that are being assembled, maybe it could be a PCB where you have several components soldered or placed, and connections are made, right? So if somebody could not distinguish between whether it is done by a human or it is done by a robot, right, then we consider that it is equally performing to that of human with respect to that particular task. So now we find robots used in so many applications, right? If you take a car manufacturing unit, so we have welding activities being performed by robots, we have painting done. So sometimes we find the machine performs activities even better than a human, right? So that is because of the natural tolerance we have in performing a job for a certain period of time, right? So after some time, maybe even this lecture, after 15 to 20 minutes or some 30 minutes, we reach a different point where we are unable to have the same concentration, right? And the tolerance level varies for different tasks. So when that varies, automatically our performance reduces, right? We become dull at the end of the day after performing a series of tasks, but that doesn't happen to a machine, right? So because of which the way it does the task, right, from morning 8 to evening 5, right, it looks all alike. But when we do the same task from morning 8 to 5, we try to, of course, definitely compromise in some way or the other at the end of the day due to various reasons. So how is a machine tested for its intelligence? This is one popular test that is commonly used. And the basic strategy behind this test is to find the responses of a machine, right? By how much the responses differ from that of a human, right? So if you say, Alexa, please switch on this particular channel, or please switch off this particular fan, right? If it does something else, right, then the response is wrong, right? So there it does not produce a correct response. So that makes the difference in the performance, right? It may be due to various reasons. The way it processed the information you sent, right? That part of the machine would have had some difficulty due to the clarity of speech or something, right? So due to the external disturbances, so it has misunderstood the information. So instead of selecting something, it selects something else. Maybe they are more closely related, right? So that is what we mean by the response the machine gives. So the technologies which are emerging in the field of AI, where these days we find a lot of applications, right? So one is the sensing part. So I have human brain performs, normally we do sensing, comprehend the information, whatever is being sensed, and act, right? So we have a set of, as a human, we have several sensory organs which help us to do the sensing part, right? So our eyes, ears, nose, everything plays a role in gathering the information. This is not collecting information is what we mean here. And for processing the information we have collected, we need some technology. So for that we have several vision mechanisms that are being used, audio processing mechanisms. So the information is processed so that you could extract whatever is required from that information, right? So comprehending the information. So how do you understand that particular information, right? So that we call it as the comprehension part. And based on our understanding, how do we act, right? So what is the action being performed? So we see a fire, that is a sensing part, right? We understand it is dangerous, right? And immediately we try to remove it, right? Or we try to seek help to put off the fire, right? So this is what these are the sequence of things done when something is being looked into or something is identified or sensed. So some technologies which uses AI with respect to sensing is vision and audio processing. We have natural language processing, knowledge representation as a part of comprehending the information, that is understanding the information, and to learn from what, if this is what happens, then what should I do, right? So for that we have several machine learning algorithms and expert systems for various purposes. And these are all some of the solutions, AI solutions which exist in the real world. So we have been making use of so many of this, right? So identity analytics, wherever we have an entry for security purposes, right? So even our mobile phones, we have access only with passwords or with our thumb impressions or our iris recognition or whatever it is, right? So that is one huge area where several applications are coming out, right? And we have the field of cognitive robotics and speech analytics. We have so many devices available which is able to understand various languages and further act, and recommendation systems, what we use every day in our life, right? So it was not those good old days where we just wanted, if we wanted to buy something, we bought it, right? So now before buying it, we try to have a vast search where all the product is available online, offline, right? And where you get good reviews for that product, whether it's advisable to go for it or whether you need to look for an alternate, right? So even to watch a movie, we first wait for the reviews. Only after we see few reviews favorable towards it, unless we have some special requirement, like you are a fan of such a person or something like that, you don't miss somebody's movie or something like that. We do some analysis before trying to watch a movie or purchase a shirt or whatever it is. And other main advantage we have is, right? So when we visualize information, right, we are able to interpret a lot of things easily, right? So we say pictures speak, they speak 1,000 words, is it not? So when I put a small graph telling this is the performance of a particular course for the past 3 semesters or for the past 3 academic years, or this is the feedback that has been received for a particular course for the past 3 years. So I can find ways of improvement. I can see where I stand and all those things. So developing some tools also require some intelligence, right? So that is what I mean by data visualization. So just some of the popular areas where AI is finding lot of scope these days. Okay? And this slide I may skip. So where it all started, AI, right? So it all started in 1946 with the first computer, ENIAC, and then in 52 we started with the playing program. So man was able to play against a machine. Maybe even in 1957 we had intelligent perception done. We had a machine acting to be a psychotherapist, Elisa. We had so many statistical AI tools, right? After 1960, we had the road test of the self-driving car done in 94, 97. We had the computer game Deep Blue beat Gary Kasparov, and we had Google starting their first self-driving car in 2009, IBM Watson winning Jeopardy in 2011. We have human vision surpassed by ML system in 2014, right? So we had an alternate for human vision. 2019 we have deep fake. So developing several videos from just a picture, right? So this is some of the evolution, and still the saga continues. Right? And what are the 7 major areas where actually AI can be used? So the first thing is knowledge representation. So I'm talking it with the perspective of the robotics domain. So how the robot should represent itself, what is the task it is supposed to perform, and the environment where it is supposed to work. Right? So how do we represent all these information, right? So that processing this information becomes easier, right? So just one illustration I have given. This is what we mean by the model we use to represent the knowledge. Search is one popular technique. Example for our search is the popular Google Maps, right? So one example, right? So whatever we look for in a sea of knowledge, right? We could obtain anything and everything. So Google search, right? Finding objects, it can be any type of search. Inference. So you have some information based on which some inference can be made. If the information is missing, right? So I give you a very meager set of data and I ask you to find out something or generate a solution from that available incomplete information. Right? So sometimes we are able to assume certain things and we are able to do, right? So we do not know actually how the traffic will be on a particular day or something, right? So our assumption is if we start by this time, maybe I will reach the destination by this time regularly, right? But that is in the absence of knowing how much of traffic would be, we are able to still make or generate an answer telling what we could perform, right? So that is inference sort of applications. Planning and problem solving. Excuse me. Sorry. So we have planning and problem solving. So this is task planning or mission planning, path planning, and all those things come under this category. Understanding natural language. So we have NLP systems. Learning refers to the several machine learning techniques where we train a system what it has to do. So based on what it has to learn, when you give a query, maybe it would be able to solve, right? So learning, we can understand very easily what we mean by learning, right? So we do not learn everything. Based on the knowledge we have learned, we are able to handle something which is unknown. And finally, vision. So with respect to domain of robotics, we have AI applied in these major works. Okay? And here also I have listed a few of the applications. So autonomous planning, navigating, recognizing, gaming, driverless cars, natural language processing, automation, robotic medical surgery, this maintenance of equipments and so on, right? So all these makes use of intelligence in some way or the other. Yes, here we could see a picture, right? Can we find a solution through AI to stop this? So what we understand from this picture is it involves a lot of human activity, right? It is a type of task which is from the picture what we could understand is something which is done monotonously when lot of human labor involved, right? So can we stop this using AI? Yes, right? So when I say we could stop this using AI, is it that we are going to replace all these human beings with machines? So whatever a human does can be just, are we going to create machines which replaces this particular lady or which replaces this particular person, right? So I'm not meaning this, meaning that, right? I am looking into the aspect of minimizing the activity of labor, at the same time where I could find ways of maximizing the productivity, right? So the problem we have nowadays is getting manual workers for doing a particular task, and even the efficiency with which they carry out the task. So only when they are being monitored, they work, and they try to take advantage whenever they are not being monitored and so on. Right? So all these types of situations could be avoided if that is the type of replacement possible in the context of applying AI, right? So that's what I mentioned. Can we build artificial people, right? So it is not that entirely we replace it by artificial man or a woman. So we are trying to reduce the labor that is being performed, right? So that is the reason behind the coining of this word robots itself, right? So it refers to robota, which means a work or a forced labor, right? So that is how it's all came into existence from a Czech play, Rossum's Universal Robots, written by Karel Čapek in 1921. This term robot was coined, meaning that it would perform a task which is difficult or boring for a human to perform. We normally tell it as robots are highly suitable for 3D tasks, right? So where the 3D refers to dull, dangerous, and dirty tasks. And the Industrial Robot Association has classified these robots, right, into various levels. So the definition provided is it is a device with a degree of freedom, which means it is movable to some extent, that can be controlled. So the first category of robots are manual handling devices. The second category, they perform some fixed activity, that is they perform repeated tasks, right? then maybe they could change the sequence of tasks they are performing with respect to time. So for some time they do this, for some other time after that it is understood, they perform the second task and they are programmed to do the third task in a cycle. So that is variable sequence. We have the fourth class of robots, playback robots. So it looks at how a human behaves and repeats the actions performed by a human, right? So if you lift your hand up, it too lifts its hand up. If you walk straight, it walks straight, right? So if you dance, it starts dancing, something like that. That is what we call as a playback robot, which mimics our activities. Then we have numerical control robots, our machines, right? Maybe where we are able to do some programming based on which some tasks could be carried out. So if you want to drill a hole or do some machining of a component, you can do all those programming on that machine and you just insert your workpiece. So the act gets done, right? So that type of machines, the fifth category. And still sophisticated machines we have, it is the intelligent robot, which is programmed to sense the environment, to understand what it has collected from the environment, apply its learning on the collected information and perform a suitable act, right? So that is what is an intelligent robot, what we presently have, and we are actually trying to make all machines intelligent so that our human task gets reduced and the efficiency also increases. Fine. So what is the connectivity between AI and robots, right? So robot is an active artificial agent whose environment is the physical world as given by Russell and Norvig. The Robot Institute of America, they combine this AI and robotics to say it is a programmable multifunction manipulator designed to move material, tools, specific devices through variable programmed motions for the performance of a variety of tasks. So this is how people interpreted what would be the level of intelligence that could be put into a machine, because of which we have a different people giving different relationship between the AI and robotics. Okay? So here is the definition for intelligent robots. So this is one which can do things that a normal robot cannot do, right? So what the lower classes of robots cannot perform, right? One important thing is it can make decisions from what it sees and learn from experience, right? So in simple, we say it is a mechanical creature which can autonomously perform. When I say it has the autonomy to do whatever it wants, it is in terms of two aspects, right? Making decisions, and it has the capability to correct itself from its own experience, right? As we all learn from our past experience, past and previous experiences, an AI robot is also one thing which can learn from its experiences and is able to make decisions based on the learning that has happened. So how do you put in intelligence, or what would be the characteristic of an intelligent robot, an artificially intelligent robot, right? So one thing is they can change their behaviors over time. So that means they have learned to adapt to their environments, right? So I know how I should talk to a student, how I should talk to my peer, how I should talk to my superior, right? So my behavior changes. So how I talk to my child, so how I talk to my spouse, there is a variation in how I behave with each and every person, right? So how do I know that I have to change my behavior? It is from the learning that has happened. And from where did the learning happen? It is based on the environment where I am in, right? And the second type is that I create my own behavior, right? So that is what we mean by the emergent behavior. So a new behavior can be developed from watching whatever has been happening previously. So I have programmed the robot to perform some set of operations. So those operations it has been carrying out, right? And from that it creates its own operation based on whatever learning that has happened, right? So your intelligent robot differs from the standard ones because of these characteristics or the capacities they have, right? So how to build a robot with an emerging behavior, how to make the robot learn, how to make it adapt. Of course, we do have a control of putting in all these characteristics into a robot, right? It does not learn by itself. It's not a self-learning happening as it happens to us. So how do we put in all these characteristics into the robots is what we will be talking about, right? So here we have an example of an AI robot, how actually it performs, right? Maybe it in a person, somebody, some elderly people in a home, they use a robot for picking up all the objects. Maybe here we have taken the example of toys and arranging it in specific places, right? So you give a command telling please clean the room, something, right? So what it does is once it receives the command, it has to identify the different types of objects, here avoiding hazards which are referred to the negative obstacles, right? So maybe there is a something which a table or a cupboard against which it should not hit itself, right? Or maybe there is a staircase where it might fall off, right? So all those things are supposed to be negative obstacles, which also has to be taken into account when it navigates, right? So once it identifies the object it has to pick, it picks. And there are several categories of toys. Some has to be arranged in different places, some has to be put in bins, right? So it has to navigate. So again there intelligence comes in. So which toy has to be put into which box, that it has to remember. It has to first recognize the type of toy, remember where it put a similar toy in the previous time or in the trip, right? And how it should position itself to place that toy, all those things, right? So even when we pick some object and place it, we say at what position I should pick it up, right? How I will carry it, where I'm supposed to place it. So we are tuned to performing something. Once we are in a new environment and we are asked to do some activity, of course we do take the guidance, or based by looking at how others do the task, we try to do. That is what we mean by learning, adapting. Sometimes we are not convinced with the way people do. We try to do it in our own style. That is the emerging behavior. Is it not? And it repeats the task till the job is done. And finally, after it has completed, it reports, okay, I have done with the job. Is it fine, or should I continue because the client is not satisfied, right? So this example, though it is simple to understand, right? See the level of intelligence, see the modules, right? Which of the modules in building that robot contains the intelligent component. See, the first intelligent component comes in here, understanding the command, right? The second component of intelligence comes in identifying which is the object to be picked, which is the object to be avoided, right? So fine. And of course picking the toy, it learns by trial and error, and it remembers. That is again intelligence, right? to distinguish between the toys. Fine. And finally, again, ask if satisfied or whether it has to continue, right? So all at various stages, different modules of intelligence is put in. You just imagine this is for one particular application, right? So as the complexity of the application increases, right, how the level of intelligence you try to put in also increases. So the evolution of AI in robotics, it started with the telemanipulator, and somewhere around in the mid 60s, it diversified into two different areas. That is in the area of manufacturing. We started using industrial manipulators, and we had planetary rovers to explore space, where actually human could not visit, like Mars and so many other things. And the system, that autonomous system that was used here, needed some vision capabilities to handle the environment. So we have one more fork diverging in this domain, right? So here actually for industrial manipulators, we didn't require any vision systems earlier. Actually now machine vision is playing a big role in making manipulators intelligent, right? So let it itself look into the environment, handle the situation and decide on, right? We are moving towards that. And in between this diverse activities happening, right? We had some intermediate systems called as tele systems, where partially the machine could handle, and where partially the human would direct what the machine has to do by means of some control. And this is one detailed forking diagram which you can see with several examples, right? So when actually robots came into existence, right? So it was all started with the Second World War, the process of manufacturing the nuclear bombs. You know, the hazard involved in employing a person because it has a lot of radiation being emitted, is it not? So how actually replacement could be done for a human? There it all started, right? And we continue with that. And in 1916, so whatever I have shown in the blue line, we have in the area of drones, we have in the area of mobile robots, we have industrial robots, and some of the example systems that have been developed during different time periods, right? So that is what is being mentioned here. And what is the difference between a traditional industrial robot and an intelligent robot we are going to do? So where this is used for performing repetitive tasks, of course it does with a high speed, very few sensing, precision is high, trajectory and the task handling policies are, they're all pre-planned, right? So once you program it to do something, then you do not have any interaction. So that is what we mean by industrial robot. Control using arms, programming it with pre-computed motions, right? So here you could see a robot welding or something happening in the assembly of a car. So where we make use of a traditional industrial robot which does not have a high level of intelligence. And so what are the problems with the traditional programming capabilities which had the requirement of intelligent environments, right? So limited sensing, whenever something is uncertain, it is not able to decide. No interaction, there is no provision for interaction, and there is no reliability that the task is being perfect. And if suppose you want to modify what the robot is performing, then it has to be entirely reprogrammed, right? There was no provision for adaptability. It was a static system. To make it perform a different set of tasks, it has to be again reprogrammed from the scratch. So because of all these problems existing in the traditional industrial robot with a minimum level of, which had lack of intelligence, it was a motivation for us to create something intelligent, right? So that is what we have today. We have sensing, lot of sensing, the form of machine vision. We have lot of activities with the human in terms of natural language processing. Because of the learning that is happening, it is able to handle uncertainty, right? And of course reliable, because of the interaction the human provides, and provision for dynamic changes, right? So it is adaptable. So once learning happens, then it becomes adaptable. Because of all these advantages needed to be added on to the standard system, we went on for AI, right? So this is the reason for need for AI. Sensor interpretation. So know where the bush is, a rock is, whether it's a playing ground, whether it's a terrain, right? All that needs some intelligence, right? To learn the situation. Interacting with the machine for fault diagnosis, recovery, localization in areas where GPS goes out, in instance, handling uncertainties, learning, right? So these are some of the places where robots are being applied, and the standard manipulator is not sufficient, which raises the requirement for an intelligent machine. So 3 requirements for intelligent robots. One is to build autonomy into the robot. For interaction, we need some human-robot interfaces, and to make the robot learn and adapt to an environment. What is that we need to do? So we need to provide these 3 things for a robot to make it intelligent, right? So give it the required autonomy. So we have to provide the autonomy so it handles anything by itself, right? Make decisions, change its actions from whatever it is seeing, right? Not waiting for the human to interfere, tell what it has to do, right? And of course, we need well developed interfaces to make the machine usable. Fine. Adaptation also is one of the characteristics to be put in, so that it learns suitably to adjust to whatever changes happen in the environment, right? So it has to, if it's a self-driving car, when it witnesses a huge traffic, it is supposed to drive slow, right? So whenever it is supposed to change lanes, then it has to handle all those scenarios. So that is what we mean by adaptation. So these are the things you need to put it into a robot to make it intelligent. So the definition of autonomy I have given here. It is about the robot maximizing success for a specific goal or mission. So autonomy is getting the required information, analyzing that, and carrying out the sequence of actions, right? So whenever the environment is subject to changes, dynamic environment, it has to replan, right? If it has the capability to do all these things, then we say it has the required autonomy level. And of course, the different levels of autonomy also possible. Whether we give full autonomy, whether we make the system semi-autonomous. If it is made semi-autonomy, what level you stop with, or what is the type of partial autonomy provided, right? So all those things have to be handled. So levels of autonomy here I have specified: human control, semi-autonomous, which can be of 2 types: shared control, traded control, or it is fully autonomous. So when I mention human control, very less level of autonomy, right? So in an intelligent system also, which is 85% or 90% controlled by the human, the level of autonomy, the degree of autonomy is less. So semi-autonomy, 50% human control, 50% the machine decides, right? And in that we have shared or traded control. You see what it is, and we have full autonomy given to the machine itself. So here we have a picture which says this is human control, right? So here he is controlling by the sequence of commands, and this is only responsible for executing the command. So if he says walk 10 feet, it will walk 10 feet. Says walk 10 feet straight, it will just walk 10 feet straight. It is not having the capability to decide that it has to walk 10 feet straight, right? Unless some physical force stops it from walking, it carries out the command, right? And here you can see this is a semi-autonomous system where we have two types. One is a shared control and the traded control. So here the activities partially carried out by the human, partially carried out by the machine, and that means he first says do something. At the end of completing that, it reports back to the person, where the person further gives the next set of instructions of what it is supposed to do. So he does not dictate the machine how it has to do, right? It says throw the garbage, right? So how the garbage will be thrown, the robot can decide, right? So he is not controlling how the actions are being done, right? So only what it has to do is being controlled, but how the action will be done, it can decide, right? So that is what is shared control. And here you can see traded control is once something is done, this will handle most of the activities, right? So what here shows is the intelligence part, right? It is using its brain to do this. This part refers to the physical activity of the task. This refers to the intelligent portion of the task, right? But whenever it is unable to decide on something, then it goes in taking the help of the user. That is one type of control. So this is also a level of semi-autonomy. This is also a level of semi-autonomy, right? So here the level of intelligence is less in the case of a shared control, whereas in the case of a traded control, it also has a good level of intelligence. It is like something, when we have two options of doing things, we are unable to choose which to prioritize, right? So we take the help of someone. So this is what I'm supposed to do. What shall I do? Right? We consult someone. That here the machine is doing that with respect to a human. Whereas here, no control, right? So it is all only switching on the machine and switching it off. Everything is being programmed, right? So suppose we have a robot to mop our house and clean our house, right? So we tell it every day at this particular time, please do a dry mop of the house or a wet mop of the house. Any instruction has been already specified, and you can also tell it do it 3 times a week on these particular days, right? So what it has to do on these particular days, what it has to do on some other days, right? So what it does is it is positioned in a particular location. Maybe it is the place where it gets charged. It knows, and it has already learned the various objects available in the various rooms of the houses. It has created a map for itself with an understanding of how it has to navigate. It does all the tasks. So we are not at all present in the house. When we go in the evening, we see that the task has been completely done without our intervention. Right? So that is a fully autonomous system. And finally, you could see after completing its activities, again it would go to the charging station by itself. So it knows where the charging station is. It has been, it has learned, is it not? So that is the full level of autonomy the machine takes, where it doesn't take the help of the user for any activity, right? So this is only with respect to the installation of the machine and the first set of things that we have to do. And anytime you want to change something, maybe sometimes you feel when you had so many guests, your house was dirty, so you wanted to clean it both in the afternoon, evening, and in the morning. You can change your programming sequence, right? So only that is the human part. The rest is all handled by the machine itself, right? So that is the full level of autonomy. So these are the 3 levels of autonomy. And coming to the interface part, right? So how do we create interfaces? So here, when both are separated, right, then there must be some mode of interaction for us to do the task. So nowadays we have so many applications in our mobile where we are able to remotely operate anything that is required, is it not? So we have programmed some activity has to be carried out. So if it is the control is with us when the activity has to start, because we do not have a provision to that level of autonomy put in the machine, right? So maybe our washing machines or something else, right? It has some level of intelligence, right? So it knows when to stop, when to wash, when to rinse, when to dry, all that doing fine. That level of intelligence, but automatically starting the machine, maybe you can set, you switch it on, after a delay you start. That may be programmed, but once it has done the task, how does it indicate to you that the task has been done? So whether the washing has been completed or what time is still left over. So many ways the interaction happens, is it not? So that is what we mean by the mode of building up interfaces, right? So one way of building the interfaces is through telesystems, where we do not interact directly, because there is a physical separation between the robot and the human. So, or you may make use of some intelligent agents in case full autonomy is given. And coming into the components of telesystem, so this is how it has. So in the remote, you have the robot with all the control, and the user just has a display and a control, right? So it is just like an application in our mobile where we are able to view and where we are able to select some options. So the control and the sensing part, the actuating part, everything is available in the remote location. So this is one example of a telesystem. So the communication, the interface is built through a mode of communication. So in some of these cases, right, when you have a physical separation, there may be some problems like this. There may be a lag in the information reaching. So because of the poor lighting condition in the remote location, you may not have a proper visualization, and sometimes we keep on looking at the display, then automatically we have a cognitive fatigue or simulator sickness, right? So we are not able to do the control from a remote end for a longer time, right? So these are all the practical things that happens, right? So when you go in for such an interface, what are the limitations? So when you design such a system, you need to handle all these issues. So where such types of applications are suitable, right? You can have a set of tasks, have it repetitive, where the workspace cannot be engineered to use industrial manipulators, right? Where you need a lot of hand-eye coordination, object recognition, display technology. You need to take care of the communication link and all those things, and whether trained person is available. So if at all these things are provisioned in a particular place, then you can go in for thinking of such a type of interface. So you put in the modules of intelligence into a robot to any level of autonomy which we need, right? So the design of the system, how do you organize the various intelligent modules into the system? We have 3 methods for organizing. So we have a hierarchical method, a reactive method, and a hybrid method, right? So this is like you build a software. So you have several components of the software. How are you going to organize these software modules to collectively implement the application? Right? So commonly, these are the three paradigms that are used for organizing intelligence into the robot. Right? So what is that the parameters that these paradigms consider for organizing intelligence? Right? It is actually built on the three things: sensing and planning and acting. Right? So we know that those are the three important work of our brain, isn't it? You sense something, comprehend, act. Right? So sense, plan, and act. So how are these three components related to each other? That forms the design. Right? So what is the relationship between sensing and planning, planning and acting, sensing and acting? So that difference is what we have derived at hierarchical, reactive, and hybrid structure. Right? So by the relationship between the sense, plan, and act modules and how the sensory data is processed. Right? It is based on these three paradigms are constructed. Right? So coming to the hierarchical paradigm, what is the relationship between this? Right? The name hierarchical itself says, first you sense, then you plan, act, and based on the feedback provided and the sensing that happens, both are considered. Further, new plan is developed and a new action generated. Right? So this is the cycle in which hierarchical paradigm works. So why people didn't like this architecture was because it is very slow, because it has to form a cycle before some activity is completed. Fine. And that is what I have given here, and how the information is processed. Right? So here you can see, I told you the information can be processed locally or globally. Sensing, right? So here only this portion, the information processing happens, right? So this module will do processing, which means it is local, right? It is not, the information is not sensing, information is not organized globally. It is only available for this particular module. So these two modules are unaware of what is the information available. So the output is only given here, and the plan is given to this based on which it acts. Coming to the reactive paradigm, the relationship between, there is no planning at all. It is mimicking human behavior, right? Somebody hits you, you just move off, right? So that is, once you send something, you act, right? A mosquito bites, immediately you try to hit it, right? So that is sense act, very fast response, right? So that planning was the one which is delayed in hierarchical paradigm. So that is removed here. So people liked it because it was too fast, right? And control people did not like because it was not a proven methodology, right? So we sometimes understand, unless a proper plan, execution will not be fine, right? So there was another group of people who were not satisfied with this reactive paradigm because it is like an instantaneous behavior, right? Some instantaneous action taking place immediately on what is sensed without analyzing whether it's correct or not. So the planning part is missing. Only people liked it because it was very fast and rigorous. So combining both these things only, we have the next paradigm. So if you build a robot on the reactive paradigm, it looks something like this. You will have multiple sensing and acting modules, and finally you can couple all these sensing and acting modules to derive whatever action you need, right? So it is not that only one sense and one act can be done. There can be different modules of sense act combined, and finally all these also can be combined together, coupled together, and you can form a new emerging act. That is what I told. If you are able to derive a new emergent behavior also, that is intelligence, right? So from all these actions, you try to get a new behavior. That is also intelligence. So don't understand that if it is a reactive paradigm, it is just limited to one thing. No, it is not. You can have a couple of activities being performed. So you can sense for the presence of an obstacle. You can sense for the presence of border, that is only within which portion of the area you can move, where you are not supposed to exceed. You may fall off or you may hit something, right? So you may employ two different things. So based on that, these two acts generated, and as you combine these two, you may get the desired act. That is one example. So here you can see one behavior directs the robot to move forward 5 meters to reach a goal. Another behavior says turn 90 degrees to avoid a collision with an object ahead. Right? So what happens is when you merge both these, you have a new act emerge where the robot will act with a 45 turn. Right? So move forward, turn 90. Combining both these, you generate a new activity from the combination of two behaviors. This is one way of designing a organizing the intelligence into a machine. And hybrid paradigm, this came into existence because people did not want to leave out the planning part. So what they did was had a global planning, right? And the SenseAct module, which was welcomed by most of the architects, they retained the SenseAct part with a global planning, unlike the hierarchical planning. See, so robot first plans how it has to perform the task, and based on the different plans, it will have a SenseAct module for each portion of the plan that it is going to deliver. Right? So it is like this. So earlier the sensing was only in one place, whereas here you can see how the planning is done. So it is globally done, and this plan is available to each and every Act Sense module, and this will be responsible for one portion of the plan, and another module will be responsible for the other portion of the plan. So this acts as a compromise between hierarchical paradigm and a reactive paradigm, which was very slow, and the other one which was very fast. And of course, lack of planning, other implications are there. To overcome that, we did planning only one time. Whereas in the hierarchical, you could see every time a sensing happens, a new plan is generated. That is time consuming, right? So here we have decided how to do the task, and to do the task, what is needed. So we have several modules defined for that purpose. So this is one way of organizing intelligence. Right. So this is what deliberative architectures are. So sensors, actuators, and all these things, you have it to be done globally. The robot first plans a solution for the task by reasoning about the outcomes and then executes. So what the control process goes through is a sequence of sensing, updating, and planning steps. So this is behavior-based robot control architectures. This we have already seen. So here you have sensors, actuators. So different modules for different activities, right? And everything can work in parallel. That is why behavior-based architecture is very fast compared to deliberate or hierarchical. Deliberate is nothing but the hybrid architecture. Right? And what are the common components you need to implement an intelligent robot? Effectors for mobility, perception for sensing, control part similar to our central nervous system, which says whether there's a feedback or not, how you are going to train the system, power, and of course communications, voice, gestures. It can be anything, right? Even you can have communication through a remote system, tele system, input, wireless, whatever it is, right? So any intelligent robot will comprise of all these components in one form or the other. So here you can see a simple block diagram of an intelligent robot. So one component, that is the control station. So the communication channel, you can have a variety of sensors based on your application. So it reads the sensors from the control station, whatever communication it receives, making use of this, make the decisions, sense or controls the actuators by driving the necessary motors and the servo. This is the complete setup of an intelligent machine. So this part is lagging. This reading the sensors, receiving the control, making decisions, that is not present if the system is a conventional robotic system. Right? And one application of intelligence. So I told you search, right? So here for navigation. So whenever we talk about an autonomous system, autonomous robot, maybe it is a self-driving car or any self-driving vehicle, maybe the example of the robot for cleaning anything, right? So you give this environment and it has to learn from the environment. So you can see this is a pathway, this is one room, this is one room, this is a big hall with some two objects placed, etc. Right? So how to build an intelligent system for this? So by understanding the environment, right? So it learns this, constructs a map, right? So you know what a map is. It will comprise of some nodes and edges, says which of the paths are connected, which of the paths are not connected, right? So you will have nodes and edges. Maybe you use a simple graph to model the environment and it will find a path, right? So how it is supposed to reach one place from the other in the minimum amount of time. So when you want to clean the room, so how it should traverse in that room so that cleaning happens in the minimum time. Right? So that is very important. So navigation, we may think it is simple, but optimal. So the common example for navigation is our Google Maps, right? So you can see it provides multiple outputs at the same time. If I say you want to reach a particular place, it asks you for so many constraints, whether you want to have a path through the tolls or whether you want to have some other through stations where you can fill petrol, diesel or whatever it is, fueling stations, whether you want a path which has restaurants, whether you want to skip certain roads, so many options it provides you, right? So when you say what is your requirement, then it says two paths are available, you can reach this path with a distance with the time of so much, this path with so much of time, which has high traffic, which has low traffic, where how many toll booths are available, everything, right? So how actually it is all capable is by first representing the entire globe in the form of structure, right? It is commonly a graph structure that is being used, and how to establish a connection between in that graph, each place is modeled as one node. And if you have a road between two places, then you can see a line, you can see water, everything, right? So that map helps in building a navigation path, right? So here you can see, I will create a map like this, right? So the nodes and edges. So my background will be removed. So what the robot has is this. So for building this map also some intelligence is required. That is why I told intelligence is required in the perception part also. So it sees this environment and constructs this with some amount of intelligence. So this is one area where intelligent modules can be built. So this is one way. So you can find whether a place is reachable, whether a place is not reachable, or if at all it is reachable, how it could reach with the optimum distance and so on. Then and the algorithm normally used, popular algorithm normally used for the planning a path between the source and the destination. We use A-star search algorithm, and now we have an advanced modified A-star search that is being commonly used. The logic behind this A-star search is, suppose I say from this place, I am able to reach these two places, right? And I see what will be the shortest distance from this place I can reach my destination. What will be the shortest distance from this place I can reach the destination. So you will be traversing with respect to that, and then you will be choosing a particular path, right? So that is what I have given, starting from the initial node, select the best node, right? So you are using two components. This component refers to, so from R1 you have reached G1, at what cost? From G1 to reach this G9, what would be the cost? From R, if you are taking this node, from R1 to R3, what is the cost? From R3 to reaching G9, what is the cost? Right? So whichever is minimal, that value or the path, the nodes lying in that path would be chosen. That is the logic behind A-star search. So this is the one that is commonly used to find the distance between two places for traversing. Right? And this is also yet another example how it works. So this cat needs to reach the bow, right? So it keeps on updating each grid values from where it is present, and it will choose a suitable grid which will give you the shortest way of providing. See, some values I have shown. All these include from here to reach this, it is 1. From this place to reach this, it will take some 7 units of time. So I have got the difference between this and see whichever is minimum value. So I will use the minimum path and I will reach this particular place. So that is what I have shown in this diagram. Fine. So this is one path, this is one path. Either of this can be chosen because both requires the same units of time to reach the destination using A-star search. And this is yet another planning strategy that is used. One is this is wavefront planning. What we do is from this point, we have set up the grid. These are all the blocks, obstacles, where there is no way. So what you do is you start from the destination. The adjacent cells are incremented by 1, then again by 1, till you reach the source. Right? And now you find out by summing up all these values which will yield you the shortest path. That means from 18 you come to 17. From 17 you look for 16. From 16 you look for 15. So like that you find to trace the path. So you can see 2 different paths which will give you the same type of distance. So this is one way of planning strategy. And this is another way of planning strategy, employing sensors, right? So you have your sensor available here, and you want to find out the distance between this place and the information has to be updated, right? So what you do is at different time instances, you find out whether an object is present here and what is the distance between this, and using some probabilistic techniques, you identify how you can reach that particular place, right? Or what is available in that particular place, whether there is an obstacle or whether there is a path, anything can be done, right? So this is this type of grid, we call it as the occupational grid. So all these structures used with respect to navigation applications. And one common intelligent module of robotic application is localization and map making. So all of you should have heard of the SLAM algorithm, simultaneous localization and mapping. So it constructs the map based on the readings. Here you have the shaft encoder readings to estimate the post, right? So including both, you develop the information that is what is the best post that the robot can employ to navigate in that particular environment, and whatever feedback it has, right? That changes are included and the global map is updated, right? So integrate the local into the global. So you can see this feedback based on which it is updated. So nowadays, commonly we use reinforcement learning techniques to make all this happen. So this is one example of an output which is generated using SLAM. Right? So all these are all these dots. Actually, it is a grid which is being constructed, and how you do analyze where you are and create a map. As you travel across the environment, you are in the process of creating the map, right? So this is how it happens. So exploration, while exploring, you do construct, right? So these are the dark lines say that these are all the boundaries, right? You cannot visit the place. So this says it is an open space, and here some objects are available, which means occupied. And now if you want to move across this open space, what you will be using is determine the centroid and see to that you walk in the center so that you don't collide with any objects, right? So this also is one common problem which can be used. So here is an animation of frontier-based exploration. So how you start with a particular place, and as you travel across the environment, you create the map, right? So actually the map is constructed here based on the exploration. That is based on the movement of the robot, what it senses, it keeps on updating the map. So robot senses the environment. So low certainty, they form the frontiers. They are nothing but the borders, and rate the frontiers using the centroid, and using the centroid values, you develop a navigation path. So simultaneously, you are doing both the process of localization and map making as you explore the environment. So how would the interaction, human-robot interaction happens in an intelligent environment? What are the modes, right? So one is you can have it controlled and used by untrained users by means of some easy to use interface, or through intermittent commands. Fine. So where the robot will have autonomous capabilities, understanding commands with different levels of complexity, so that it can control with the maximum autonomy, or interact with a variety of humans. Right? So for this, you need some natural language processing. When I say variety of humans, each person talks in his own language. So it has to be able to adapt to that particular. So when you build an interface for the communication between the human and the robot, so all these are the three ways. So whichever you find it suitable to do it, you can choose that. And when you use persons to use the interface, you see to that you don't have some instructions which would be dangerous, right? When some misinterpretation happens, then maybe that closest action will lead to something else, right? So you need to keep in mind all these things when an intelligent interface is designed, right? It has to be user friendly. That is what easy to use interface. Remove all the dangerous instructions, which will lead to some anonymous actions, right? And the commands the way you interact, right? See to that it has a lower level of complexity, and the instructions should not be such that it overrides the autonomy of the machine. Provide provision for interacting in multiple languages, right? So all that makes it comfortable to use, right? So in putting an intelligence with respect to interaction, what is that we can think about, right? And so we have interfaces in different ways. Graphical programming interfaces. So what are their problems, right? So that requires some understanding of the robot. You can go in for didactic interfaces. So here, pointing interfaces, how to interpret human gestures. This is for something where a robot follows a human. Voice recognition, of course, speech recognition is quite difficult compared to the other interfaces, because you expect the robot to respond to the words that you specify, right? So nowadays we have sophisticated systems available, but still with some flaws. Right? It is not 100% perfect that we could visualize when we make use of several voice recognition systems, is it not? So existing technologies we have for developing interfaces is we have several voice recognition and speech synthesis modules. We have gesture recognition modules, text-based interaction chatbots, right? So all these are some interface modules that are available, right? What are the research challenges we have in the interfaces? How to convey the intentions of a robot? How to understand the intent of the user from the visual observation made? How to keep the attention of a human on the robot, and how to integrate the human input with the autonomous operation. So without compromising for all this. So you can look into problems in these aspects, which can be explored with reference to developing interfaces for interacting with human. for the human robot interaction. And the next important part of where you can put in intelligence is to make the system learn, right? So how to interpret the sensor information. So for this, we have several machine learning strategies. So in this respect, what are the types of problems we have? Recognizing objects, object detection or whatever it is. How to accommodate all the data. So when you have huge amount of data, how to understand what that information is conveying, right? So that is one area. And how to learn what has to be done from the data that is available to us, right? So for this only we have several machine learning techniques which uses or which learns from the existing data. So you know the patterns of the data that is available. So from the pattern of the data, something is understood and it learns how to devise new strategies and tasks. And based on some feedback or control that is available, based on the changes in the environment, dynamically, then how to build in adaptation. Right? So for this, we normally use reinforcement learning strategies. Right? For learning new strategies and tasks, we use machine learning techniques. And this is the computer vision part of it. So all these modules have research problems for putting in intelligence into a robot. Right? So learning approaches, we have supervised learning by teaching, learning from demonstration, imitation, learning by exploration. That's what I meant, reinforcement learning. Right? So that is whenever you do a particular task, you are given with a reward. So if it is a positive reward, it means that you can continue. If it is a negative reward, then you understand that your action has to be changed. So that from the reward, you understand how to further proceed. Right? So they can learn by trying different actions, observing their results. Through the rewards they earn, they can optimize their strategy. When I say supervised learning, it is by teaching. So you have so much of information available. So using that information, if I say, if I do this, I will end up here. If I do this, I will end up here. So from that, you can understand if you decide on doing something, where you will end up with, right? So based on that, you learn information. That is supervised learning. Supervised means knowing what will be your end result if something is done. So based on that, you devise solutions for new tasks. And by demonstration is by observing how a human is performing a task or how another robot is performing the task. So this comes by observation. Right? So sometimes we look at how somebody is doing something and then we try to follow that. Right? Normally, humans do learn by this mechanism only. Right? It is not only that. So when we have learned using all these mechanisms, that's why we try to put in all these into the machine also. And what are the capabilities of intelligent robot, right? So it can understand the modeling of the mechanism. It can provide reliable control of the actuators. It can generate motions specific to the task. It can integrate the information from various sensors, like perform sensor fusion and so on. Handle noise and uncertainty. That is, if you have some data which is not sufficient, that's why I told, in case of insufficient data, also some inference can be made. And if the data is corrupted, from that also, it could handle the situation to some extent. And whatever strategies it devises can be adapted. It can help in developing flexible mechanisms for solving the problem. So this is an example of a tour guide robot developed by Carnegie Mellon University. So named as Minerva, which was employed in a museum to have a tour of a museum. Right? So people use this as a guide to visit the various places in the museum. Can you see? Okay, so let us see some of the robots for intelligent environments. We have it as service robots, security guards, delivery robots, cleaning robots for assistance, mobility, services for elderly and people with disabilities, right? So current robots, intelligent robots that are available in the market, and in which area we can look into for varying the level of intelligence or adding on more to the existing machine. And to conclude, as a difference between the human and machines, these are the three things which machines lack: emotions, understanding, and consciousness. Right? So we all would have witnessed this in the Indran movie, right? Emotions, understanding, and consciousness. These are the main factors that differentiates an intelligent machine from an intelligent human. One more slide, sorry. And here also there is another video of how this robot seemed to be a failure. This was actually a personal assistant, an LG Cloyd bot, which disobeyed his master, right? So maybe you can view it later. Right, differences we have seen, and here is the future of robotics, intelligent robots. So you can design robots to recognize presence, posture, gaze, exchange, human interface, and design systems that can learn through reinforcement. So this is the emerging field now, where you build systems which can learn through feedbacks, right? So learning through feedbacks and designing through systems, intelligent machines through feedback is the current technology which has more of focus, right? And of course, moral ethics to be practiced in any field of engineering, right? So we have some dilemmas in what could be the legal rights of autonomous being, replacing humans in the workplace, ethics of deleting intelligent robots. So creating intelligent robots, so we all become gods there, right? So these are some of the ethics and the moral part of which creates worries in for which no answer available in designing intelligent robots. So I end my presentation here. I think I have given you an overview of where intelligence can be put into a robot. So what type of research problems you could approach, and what some of what we have intelligent systems we have today in market. So thank you for the patient listening. If you have any queries, I'm open to answer.
So dear participants, if you have any query, you can ask madam.
Hope I'm on time, sir.
I think there is no query from the participants.
Okay, sir. I think I'm on time.
Yes, madam.
Okay, sir.
So thank you, ma'am. I thank Dr. G. Subhashini, madam, for delivering the wonderful guest lecture in the topic of artificial intelligence for robots. It was really useful, madam. So you have taught so many interesting intelligence system. Definitely, it will be very much useful to us. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and spending your valuable time with us, madam. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I thank all of you for this opportunity and for your patient listening. If you have any queries, you can personally contact me. I will try to share whatever knowledge I have. Thank you.
Thank you. So dear participants, I have posted the feedback link for day 3 session 1. So kindly fill the feedback. So our session 2 will be start by 11:45. Thank you.